It is the 25th day of January 2021 and you are just on time for the Week in Focus. I am Nancy Lelima. Welcome to the program. And on today's show, we'll be talking about the campaign trail for 2022 elections. We'll be looking at the Kapedo unrest and, of course, the United States elections, though Joe Biden being president, and the directives that he has issued on in his first day in office. And with me to discuss the issues is political scientist Onchari Oyeyo. Karibu.
Thank you.
Yes, and on the other end is John Wangai, who is a lawyer and a political analyst. So let's dive straight into our discussion. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga early this morning was at a radio station.
Come FM.
Yes, and he was talking about, he actually rubbished the dynasty versus hustler narrative. And he actually said that the first three presidents were not from any dynasty. So where are we talking about dynasties? What are these dynasties? So what are your thoughts on the theme?
I think, thank you so much for inviting us here. The former Prime Minister is in denial. When we talk about the dynasties, if you look at the Webster English Dictionary, it shows you that it's a family which has been in possession of something. It can be economic power, political power for a period of time. So if we're talking about a first generation of leaders, we don't talk about dynasties. But if a leader has been somewhere, then that is transmitted to the son, then the son is considered part of a dynasty. That is why Gideon Moi is part of a dynasty, because from Moi, who was not, we have Gideon here now, who has political power and economic power, given all the money that the father was able to grab. And of course, some of it, I believe, was made genuinely. When you look at Kenyatta, that is a dynasty. The dad was not a dynasty because he was the founding father of, the republic. But then that political power was given to the son. Now, the president, that is the Kenyan president, is part of a dynasty. When you look at Musalia Mudavadi, the dad had some political power during his time. The same was given to the son. So now Musalia qualifies to be a dynasty in this context. Now, that is not even the issue. The issue is Ruto has been so creative to a point where this binary classification of Kenyans has caught fire. It's a very serious slogan. Kenyans have jumped into the bandwagon, and rubbishing it is not a solution. It doesn't matter who rubbishes it. As we speak now, Kenyans are actually now identifying themselves. If you don't come from these few families that have been holding or clinging to political and economic power for so long, you're not a dynasty. You, the other side, which is hustler. And you can't rubbish a narrative that has given 4 victories out of the last 5 National Assembly by-elections. There is a serious problem if you rubbish it. Unless you've been told by your advisors that if you rubbish it, it will go away. But from where I am, I'll tell you it's not going away.
And Wangai, what are your thoughts when it comes to, the dynasty hustlers narrative? But the hustler in question, as many people say, is a man of means. He has a lot of wealth. So then, is that a hustler, or is it just a way of appealing to the public?
Thank you, Madam Narima, for hosting us this afternoon. Well, in that discussion, I want to second what my brother said, that when you talk about hustlers and dynasty, first of all, this is a topic which has been taken out of context. Because when we talk of the hustler narrative, if we have been keen listening to the people allied to the deputy president, what they have been talking about is that necessarily it does not mean that the hustler, the person who is called the hustler, is the person who doesn't have something. But if you look at the narrative, they say that the person who works very hard so that you can get some means, and also meaning that today it's something that inspires hope. It's something that is more of bringing a paradigm shift. That yes, today you might be here, but tomorrow by hard work and by God's graces, you can reach somewhere. That is something like I can say this is something that inspires hope. And as my brother said, that is something that has resonated well with the majority of Kenyans. and trying to rubbish it as some people are trying to rubbish it by calling it dynasty versus hustler, or by calling it a class war. I think it will take time before you rubbish that kind of thing, because it resonates well with the majority of Kenyans. That yes, today I am selling, I'm selling some groceries somewhere in town, but tomorrow I can own a shop. The other day I can own a supermarket. That is something which inspires hope. That you don't have to come from a royal family. You don't have to come from, a political family so that you can get there. So I think the Hustler dynasty conversation is something which people are trying to, rubbish it by taking it out of context. But as a matter of fact, it resonates well with majority of Kenyans, and it inspires hope to the common man.
So then does that mean just because someone is from a dynasty, then they're not worth our vote? Are we voting according to dynasties,
No.
hustlers, or according to what someone can actually give to the people?
No, I think on that particular matter, the other day we heard the president say that the presidency has been, a matter of two tribes. But what we forget about is the current constitution that we have, the 2010 constitution, is one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. And it was overwhelmingly voted for by Kenyans in 2010 after a huge clamor for constitutional change, which was, characterized by a lot of bloodshed and, loss of lives. And when you look at Article 38 of the Constitution, it gives each and every Kenyan the right to vote, the right to buy, the right to be associated with a particular person or a particular party. So I think in a democracy, the majority have their say. So saying hustler versus dynasty, I think there is in particular no way that someone is bad from vying for political office. But what I think the hustler side are saying is that you can be today here and tomorrow you can go somewhere by hard work and God's grace. I think it's something which inspires hope to majority of Kenyans, and especially such that at the moment we have over 200,000 graduates every year, and with the unemployment and stuff. So this is coming. This time it's very timely, coming at especially in these times of the unprecedented COVID-19, where we saw over 1.2 million Kenyans lose their jobs. So I think it resonates well with the majority of Kenyans. But it does not necessarily say that because I come from a political family, I cannot buy. No, it does not buy anyone. It just is the way we have been tribal. I think this is something which is getting people out of that kind of narrative, so that now we can resonate with a new model which is focused on economic progression, which is more of people-centered and involving the citizenry in decision making.
Okay, Onchari, the Jubilee government has been unable to certify the Big Four agenda that they had put forward. And we saw former Prime Minister Raila Odinga actually calling Deputy Ruto Mr. 6 months, because he was the face of, in the first 3 months, then in the first 6 months, we're going to have stadiums across different counties. So then the Deputy President says, ask the President, because they are in one government. But then now for the Deputy President to run for office come 2022. But he's been part of a government that has failed in its promises to its people. What does that say about him?
Now, first off, we can only have one president at a time. A few months ago, maybe close to a year, the Britons rejected the agenda of Theresa May and replaced her with Boris Johnson. Then outside Downing Street number 10, he assumed office and he made it very clear. He made promises. He said, I'm going to increase the number of GPs, the number of teachers, the number of police officers on the streets of London, and he said the buck stops here. He pointed to his office. The buck stops with the Prime Minister. He has cabinet secretaries, he has officials, he has guys he works with. He took responsibility. As you seated there, if I ask you who was Kibaki's first vice president, you might not remember. It was Michael Kijana Wamalwa the late. Second, you might not remember. Most likely, it was Awori. Kenyans don't remember deputies. They don't remember.
They remember who was in power.
That is the point. So when Raila talks about, Mr. 6 months, it doesn't make sense. And that shows the generation of the Raila I've always known. A very, very clever politician who focuses on what matters. So over the last few months, he's been hitting, he's actually been missing, makes funny statements. There's no way you can deflect attention from the president to the deputy. As malicious as you might be, it does not work.
But the deputy is vying for presidency.
That is okay. And you realize on the, I think 19th of March 2018, there was the handshake. I may have missed the date by a few days. And most of us came out and said, you know what, from now going forward, the deputy president is politically dead. Raila moved into government. The president moved from place to place saying, Zakomu is in government, we consult and we make decisions together. So if you look at the projects, as much as they are not very useful like SGR, they were accomplished during the first 5 years of the president. Now, from that time going forward, when Raila joined the government, what we've seen is scandal after scandal, including the theft of masks and sanitizers and COVID cash donated by the likes of Jack Ma. So Raila takes responsibility because he's with the president in this second term of the president.
But he's not in government.
He's doing what?
He's
Raila is in
not
government. Practically, actually the de facto deputy president is Raila. The practical deputy president, the person who helps the president in making decisions, is Raila. Okay? But the legally identified deputy president is Ruto, the man who exists in paper. We know that Kenyans are not blind. So we cannot run around and say, you know, the deputy president is part of government. He's not part of government. That is why every single day, they're, blasting him and blaming him and talking all this kind of disingenuous things. He's not in government. Practically, Ruto is not in government.
But he is in his office and doing what
Which office? Doing what?
In his capacity as
the deputy president's duties were removed from him and given to Matiang'i. We know that.
Yes,
coordination
some,
of...
Yes, some of
actually,
the
most of them. He was reduced to just some guy who was a Cheska and all that. We know that. Kenyans know that. Politicians will pretend it's not happening. Kenyans can see it's happening. So the man in government is Raila. So any mistake the president has made in his second term has to be shared with Raila. And every single time Raila opens his mouth and tries to blame the deputy president, Kenyans see him as a liar and a conman. So he has to be, just a moment, he has to be very, very careful. So now this is practical politics, not pretense and all these shenanigans here. That's what we can see. Actually, at some point, Raila could summon ministers and give orders, something the deputy president was not able to, has not been able to do. Okay? So, if there is something that was not done and was promised by the deputy president, the blame goes to the president. The buck stops with the president. And there can only be one president constitutionally at a time. Okay? That is it. If there is something the president wanted to do and the deputy president stood in his way, you could have pushed him aside like he has done now. So he cannot tell us, oh, you know, all this nonsense about theft and stuff like that. It doesn't make sense. If Ruto was stealing like you're telling us, you should have kicked him out like you've done now. Where were you? You cannot tell Kenyans, you know, I was seated somewhere and the president and the deputy president was stealing. It does not make sense. So in as much as you want to repeat that, repeating it does not make it right. It still falls. The buck stops with the president.
Okay, so from what I understand, you seem to have cleansed the deputy president. Like
no,
he's without
I'm not
fault.
here to wash anybody. Okay. I don't have. I didn't come here with any disinfectant.
Sanitizer.
Yeah, no, I don't have that. I'm just a practical person. So every single person, the moment when you listen to ODM guys, they'll tell you, you know, he's running around and doing this and doing that, and yet he's part of the government as a deputy president. You know, they're telling Kenyans to know the deputy president is not in government. Practically is not. But luckily, the president himself on numerous occasions has told the Kenyans, Raila is in government from the time of the handshake. And you know, they have a failed unity project. We're seated here, myself, our friend here, and yourself. Then the gentleman over there comes and says, you know, I want to unite you guys. And he pushes me out and brings another person. So which kind of unit are you creating? If you're pushing me out and create and adding, so 2 minus 1 plus 1 is basically a zero-sum game. So the president tells us Raila is here to assist me unite the country. So Raila comes in, he actually comes alone because Musalia is out, Musyoka is out. Then the deputy president is pushed out. Out he goes with Kalenjin votes, not even votes, the Kalenjin people who are disenchanted. And he also goes with Mount Kenya. So which unit are you selling here? It doesn't make sense. That is why it's failed. That is all this BBI bullshit is not going anywhere. Sorry for the language. It's not going anywhere. It's totally failed.
And let's talk about the Building Bridges initiative in
To nowhere.
the Mount Kenya region. We have seen the president, you know, the handshake was between the president and former prime minister. And in Mount Kenya, there was the leaked letter of Irungu Kangata implying that BBI was not popular in the mountain region. And I've also seen the president speaking in various occasions in mother tongue, perhaps to identify better with his people. So BBI not being popular in Mount Kenya, is that what's on the ground?
Well, thank you. First, I also want to second what my brother said in the last point, that the Constitution says that the functions of the Deputy President is that he is the principal assistant, and he can only do the works that he has been delegated to do. And the few functions that he had, we saw they were transferred by Executive Order number 1, or I don't know, 20 watts, to the Super CS Matiang'i. And so at the moment he is, as you know, as idle as we are. Coming to the issue of Building Bridges initiative, I am an observer in the verification exercise going on in Bomas, and actually we have detected a lot of illegalities and irregularities in the signatures that were corrected, and especially most of these things coming from Mount Kenya, these signatures, it looks like, you know, because you can make a whole page with the same handwriting. There was some, you know, rumors here and there that they used to take the, you know, M-Pesa documents, books, and, you know, copying. So we have a lot of issues with the document itself. But now going by the letter of Irungu Kangata, by the way, he was my former lecturer in Catholic University. He is a person I have known to be very honest and candid in everything that he does. I think he was very genuine and very honest with His Excellency the President, that people in Mount Kenya are not pleased with what is happening. Because at the moment, during this term, actually during this second term, we have seen a lot of, you know, demolitions of buildings and houses. We have seen traders' goods being confiscated in the, you know, in the ports, and it is during this term, this regime, that the people from Mount Kenya region have continued to suffer. When you look at things like the tea, when you look at things like the coffee, when you go to Meru, you'll see things like Mira. A lot of markets have been banned. So I think generally the expectations people had with the president, he did not deliver as the, you know, as they expected. And now he is coming to tell people that, you know what, guys, there is this document called Building Bridges Initiative, and it's a good document because, number one, it brings you 94 senators, it brings you 600 members of parliament, and an expanded executive, so that we can, you know, include everyone and have a united Kenya.
Yeah.
And I think that is not resonating well with the common man, because those are not the issues. It's not a priority at the moment. With the COVID, with us at the moment, we have seen over 1.2 million people lose jobs. We have seen companies close. You know, we have seen revenues. Our revenues have, you know, gone down in collection at the moment, because, you know, someone who is looking at this document, you can see it's more of an unreasonable document, because at the moment, they are promising Kenyans 35% to the counties. But at the moment, even 15% has been a big challenge to distribute to the counties. And at the moment, because of that, we are seeing, nurses, doctors strike. So it's a big challenge at the moment that we have. So I think people are saying that, we need the unity, but let us have our prioritized right as a country, as a nation. Let us, involve people.
And
The
you
BBA is a
something
product.
about
Yeah.
Irregularities.
Sorry.
You said you're an observer at Bomas.
Yes.
And you have said that there are irregularities.
Yeah.
And so could this be a sabotage, or you feel like these irregularities are just part of what the Building Bridges initiative is about?
Well, we have documented the old things, and we are waiting up to the last day. We have 17 more days to go, so that now we can give a full report and get to know the way forward, even if it's challenging the whole thing in a court of law. And actually, at the moment as we speak, there are quite a number of cases which are pending before the court. So what I was saying is that the BBA itself is a product of two people. The Constitution in Article 10 envisions that we should have, involvement of the people, public participation. The whole document.
But that was factored in.
Yeah.
That was factored in by different.
No, that was not
sectors
public
of people.
participation, because they would have, rallies, and what my brother was saying, you cannot bring someone, remove the other one. No, that is zero. You would have rallies, you'd see people arrive to the deputy president being kicked out of the meeting, the leaders being kicked out of the meeting. So I think that was not public participation per se, because I think that was just a mere PR.
We have youth groups that they have said they were involved, and as well as groups of women, and also religious leaders who have been involved.
Well, we can say that this is a document of the elite, because in those groups I've not seen the common man involved in the whole participation.
But people always need a representation.
And they are the majority. And that is why the whole process is facing rebellion in the ground. Because when you go to preach BBI, people are rebellious against the whole thing. Because from the word go, the common man was not involved. Involved the leaders, the religious men and women, sitting in big offices and boardrooms. But this is something that you need to involve the people. Something a constitutional change is not something that can be taken that easily. But bearing in mind that the current constitution we have, it's a process, it's a grammar for constitutional change, started back in the 1990s, and we achieved the constitution in 2010. So not something that you can just wake up and handshake and constitution. I think you have to involve the people, so that even the people can feel, can own up the document.
Okay, and let's quickly talk about ODM. They have advertised for presidential candidates to come and, try and there'll be nominations later. But for now, then come and apply. There are qualifications that have been put in place. Of course, be a person of very reputable record, and many more that they have listed. So, and some people have asked, are they shopping for a candidate, or is this an opportunity for ODM to give Kenyans, a platform for Kenyans to get a reputable leader once and for all, and not just have Raila as the leader who is always the presidential candidate time in and time out?
Thank you. We've been here before. Raila knows how to scheme everything, make it look like it's very democratic and open and free and fair, but then the end game, the end point is always predetermined. So at the back of his mind, he knows, I'm going to be on the ballot as a presidential candidate for my party. Now, Kenya and most African countries have not moved beyond personality parties. If Raila Amolo Odinga moves out of ODM today, there won't be ODM. And whichever party moves to, let's call it stool, that is what will be the hit part of the moment. So ODM is equal to Raila. So he knows it's his party. Okay? So all this shopping for candidates, that is just PR. They want to tell Kenyans, say, you know what, ODM has democracy, and we're going to make it open. Anyone who wants will do what? Is free to apply. Then we go to nominations, we pick our presidential candidates. It's a path that is meant to just throw flowers for Raila to walk on as he goes for the ticket, of course, in preparation for 2022. And it's good to excite members, create some conversation like we're having now, so that ODM does not disappear from, the conversation in the build up to the 2022 presidential contest, where obviously it's going to be between Raila and Ruto. The likes of Musalia, Musyoka think they're going to be involved in one or the other, but I don't think it's headed there. That is what happens all the time. Raila knows how to excite, to create that moment of what? Excitement, to a point where now he's coronated as the party torchbearer. There is what we call the Raila fatigue that is real. People are tired. They like to see a day when Raila will say, you know what, there's the permanent running mate, Musyoka. Maybe now it's your turn. Go ahead and do what? These promises have been made. I run this time around, the next time I'm going to support you whether win or lose. And then something happens, and then these guys again pushed and they become running mates. That's Musyoka and Musalia. So there's the Raila fatigue, especially from the Musyoka side and the Musalia side. They're looking for a time, they're looking forward to a time when one of these guys will be given support by Raila, so that he can also be either running mate or might just support them from outside. They expected 2022 to be that.
We are taking a short break here on the Week in Focus. We'll be back to talk about the Kapedo unrest and, of course, the U.S. presidential elections, with Joe Biden giving directives in his first day in office. Don't go too far.
Bako Kezia mpaka nitakapomaliza naye ndio utampata.
Mbona ninyi hamkuumba wanyama pori mkaishi na wanyama wenzenu huko? Hebu nisaidie kufungua.
Toka hapo ni baya amesema mtoke.
Toka, enda. Peleka huko. Tuondoleni hapa chawa na kunguni. Ulimtupa ushauri huo jikini ya Canada. Waachana. Sasa hata hivi kuza wangu hautakia nini? Hata unarudi. Upendi.
Kiza Savimbi, I am taking this child to hospital. Ole wako. Niambiwe na anything wrong with her. Tajua mimi nani?
Nyinyi watu wawili mnashirikiana kupokonya watu mali zao, alafu mnakula mkinenepa tu. Haidha mkubali kurudisha mali za watu ama mkatae. Mimi mwenyewe najua vile nitazichukua.
Welcome back. You are watching the Week in Focus right here on Lookup TV. And remember, you can engage with us. The SMS number is 20374. The SMS number is 20374. And today on the show, we are talking about the campaign trail for 2022, the Kapedo unrest, and also the Joe Biden's United States president and the directives that he gave in his first day in office. And just before the break, gentlemen, we were talking about, the popularity of BBI or lack thereof. And maybe now we can talk a little bit about Moi, the Rift Valley politics. Just shortly, because there's other things to talk about. Yes, so Rift Valley, there's always a question of who's the kingpin. And the Kalenjin elders, they have appointed Moi as the speaker. So it's going to be the voice of all the Kalenjin people in Rift Valley. Does that challenge the, we'll say, popularity or the run to presidency of William Ruto?
Well, I don't know your sources, but my sources tell me this is a section of the Talai elders who are heavily bribed to anoint Gideon Moi as a spokesperson. A very small section. What we know is, for the longest time, the Talai elders have always anointed or appointed the most popular person at the moment to be their leader. Now, accidents don't happen in politics. What has happened in Rift Valley for the longest time, for the last 2 decades, has been planned. Ruto is not where he is by accident, and there is no amount of this pageantry and this nonsense of a few guys being given money and then clothing someone in funny regalia that will change what we know. Rift Valley left long time ago and shifted to Ruto's side. All this nonsense will not change anything. Moi is too late. The ground shifted, and it just needs to wake up. And the guys from the rest of the country, we want, of course, to bring an additional, player into the Rift Valley politics, missing the point. They're actually making it very hard for Gideon Moi to even go back home. Forget about being able to contest, just going back home, because he won the senatorial seat because the deputy president was willing to let him win.
But
there is no
It was not
politician.
under his party.
Well,
He's under the kind of party.
it doesn't matter. They actually had to pull out the Jubilee candidate for Gideon to win. If he's man enough, I dare him to go back in 2022 and contest even for MCA. It doesn't matter which party he uses. He'll fail. He'll fail. Now, if you want to know what's going on, there's this guy who was the leader of Chama Cha Mashetani. Oh, Chama Cha Mashinani.
Wow, you just did that on purpose.
No. He came back after, abusing the deputy president and making all sorts of statements. He had to come back home because he knows he has been able to. By the way, Isaac Ruto is very smart. He has read the signs of the times. He is a consummate politician. So he wants to come back as governor. And he has known the moment I throw my weight behind the deputy president, I'm home and dry. And he's going to come back as governor in 2022. So Gideon, the coronation of Gideon, that is just for the cameras and obviously for his newspaper, The Standard, to give him a headline. It's headed nowhere. It's a waste of time.
But we have seen the Talai elders. They are regarded very highly by the community, and whichever leader they settle for, then that they have anointed, then it represents the interest of the whole community. And when the Talai elders anointed Ruto, there was the time, and then it was revoked. So then, what does that mean? He says that they were heavily bribed, but they represent the community.
Well, yeah, I also agree with him that the anointing of Gideon Moi by the section of elders was more of a big joke. Because before these elders, just as my brother said, before these elders appoint you as the community spokesperson, they have first to check your influence, not only in that region, but also national influence. Because at the moment, just as my brother said, when you look at 2017, Gideon Moi won the senator seat, by a sheer of luck. The current CS Labour, Cherugui, was defeated by just a small margin. So he won the Senate seat by sheer of luck. There's no way you can compare with somebody who, has helped ODM win the Karenjin votes in 2007 and win the presidency twice. So I think the charisma of the deputy president is very brilliant. As a person who knows how to plan his things well. I think you cannot compare the deputy president and Gideon Moi. And as he has said, I also challenge him. If he is watching us, I also challenge him to vie for an MCA position in Baringo. He will lose because at that point in time, he was using the influence of his father, our late president. But at the moment now, he is alone. He is a lone ranger. So it's beginning to get, a bit difficult for you. And that is why you saw the other day when they wanted to anoint him. Actually, I'm told that that section of elders are expelled from the Talai council. They are expelled already. So the day they wanted to anoint him, so we saw that the youth of the area, they chased him away. But now they went and hired a small place somewhere, and just as my brother said, they were heavily bribed.
I also don't know your sources.
So I think that was a big joke, just as you said, just for the camera. It has no influence at all. We all know at the moment the only person in Kalenjin, the only person who has national influence at the moment is the deputy president.
Okay, so let's just move on to the Kapedo unrest. So there have been a great number of killings in the past 1 week or so. And the MP of Tiati, William Kamket, was arrested and then he was let go after paying bond. So, but these killings and Kapedo specifically, areas around so Turkana County, Baringo, as well as West Pokot. Banditry in those regions have been said to be politically instigated. But now then, year in, year out, we have the same killings. Remember in 2014, when we had one of the biggest attacks on the police force, where we lost 21 police officers at the Kapedo. They call them the killing fields. So then, does the government know if there are politicians who are behind these killings, and what are we doing about it?
I think the Kapedo killings point to what we call a failure of our security structure. That is a failure on the part of the president, failure on the part of the Minister of Interior. That is CS Fred Matiang'i, who has been, celebrated before for being very effective. A few days ago, a chief or sub-chief somewhere in Luo Nyanza was apparently either abused or slapped by a member of parliament. And then there was a lot of noise to a point where this member of parliament actually had to go and record a statement. That is a very small thing. Now, if we can pay so much attention to such a small thing, why can't we take care of the banditry in those places? Now, the arrest of the member of parliament was too late. Anytime, we have security structures in this country. There is the NIS, we have the police, we have even MI, the military intelligence. If the lower structures cannot take care of stuff, what you do is to move up the structure and make sure security is taken care of. You saw what happened in Washington when the regular police could not take care of, the insurrection. The National Guard was, called in to help, to offer support. So if the regular police at Kapedo cannot do stuff, they cannot provide the required security, then we have to go to the next level. Intelligence services have to play their role. They have to go to the ground, collect information, and these killings can be stopped before they even occur. So waiting for guys to be killed and then you go and arrest a member of parliament, it's an non-starter. It doesn't help. And remember, just like year in year out, we see guys dying due to floods, sometimes droughts and all that. We don't take care of things before they occur.
Beforehand.
That is a problem. We have all these resources, we have all these structures, but some people are sleeping on the job. So now, after these guys have been killed, you will hear some pronouncements and funny statements of guys being moved here and there, transfers, totally unnecessary. We can take care of stuff before it happens. And the banditry in those places, in Kapedo and all that, is not a new thing. It's always happened. Yeah. Like you said in 2014, we had the police massacre. Yeah. All these things have always happened. So we don't have to, we can actually not blame the member of parliament. We blame the government for sleeping on the job. That is why it's funny when a president goes to a vernacular, radio station to address his deputy or whoever he wants to talk about, and people are dying. So which matters now? Is it the lives of Kenyans who are being killed by bandits, or a document that is untimely and has been rejected by people for serious reasons? Let's say I'm seated here, I cannot access a meal. I don't have food, and I pay taxes to a government. And then you're talking to me about a document that is meant to expand the governance structure. Again, on my taxes, what am I supposed to listen to? I should actually declare you a madman. Nobody is going to listen to the nonsense of BBI on an empty stomach. That is practical common sense. So on Kapedo, the government has failed us. You can't deny that. That is the point. So it's the Minister of Interior to send sufficient resources in terms of police to Kapedo. All those bandits get arrested, and then it's taken care of. And then it's not just moving in without any kind of guidance. You have to involve the communities there, so that if there is peace to be built, it's community initiated. They have to be part of all this. All these pastoralist communities, they fight over small things. Then we have some funny elements of culture in some of these communities. For example, if you raid a neighboring community and bring back like 50 or 60 herds of cattle, you declare a man. So again,
so it's also cultural as well.
Yes, the president, when he moved into office, he made it his target to crush non-government organizations, which some of which had the responsibility of going to these remote places and helping us to root out these retrogressive and backward cultural practices. Now because NGOs have been, crushed, we don't have guys there telling guys, stop killing one another in the name of proving your manliness. That is the point. So we have all these cascading effects. One leads to another, and then there's bloodshed.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a failure of leadership, but more specifically, the Minister of Interior, and of course the leadership of the president again. The buck stops with the president. Has failed us.
Okay. And we have seen, it's like a combination of the three counties. We'll say Turkana, Baringo, and a little bit of West Pokot.
Yes.
Because that's how the bandits,
Yeah.
keep raiding and stealing animals.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of young people being used. And even during the week, CS Matiang'i said that a lot of young men had taken oaths. They take an oath, then, all they do, then they swear, and then now they go and commit the raiding and the banditry. So again, are we seeing a government that has failed its youth with the promise of job opportunities and better life, and then the youth who are said to have nothing to do, then they can easily be involved in crime?
Yeah, first I want to, it's very painful and regrettable. May the souls of the departed rest in peace. I also want to reiterate that there was a philosopher who was called John Locke, and he talked of the social contract theory, whereby the citizens surrender some of their rights to the government, and now it is incumbent upon the government to ensure that some of these rights are achieved. For example, we don't have a right to own a firearm unless we apply for one.
Yeah.
So we have surrendered that right to the government, and now it's incumbent upon the government to provide to us security. So what we can say is that indeed, yes, the security sector has failed Kenyans, and coming from Laikipia, we border Baringo, West Pokot, and Turkana in the other side. Just recently, I think 2 weeks ago, we lost four policemen in such, but they had reported because I think it's not a big number. So, but alive is alive. So what I'm saying is that the government has failed us. Number one, what I would have advised the government is to return guns to the police reserve, because the moment the police reserve had the guns, at least the security was somehow top notch. But since they denying them the right to own the guns, I think the security dropped in the area, because like in Laikipia, which Laikipia is so vast, yeah. It's a combination of, for example, Nyeri, Murang'a, like 3 counties together. And assessing a police station, I think you have to go to kilometers to assess a police station. And the police station itself has less than 3 police officers, and you're expecting them to, provide security for all these people. So I think the Ministry of Interior, led by Dr. Matiang'i, we have seen the onslaught that has been happening to members allied to the Deputy President, that 3 or 4 trucks of policemen are brought to arrest a single person. Why can't they now take the same policemen to such areas? And also, we cannot rule out the issue of climate change. At the moment, we have a change of weather patterns. So at the moment, we also have something that depleting resources. So people there so now are fighting for the resources. So I think it's high time we also take climate change seriously.
Okay.
Because going forward, it's a huge disaster. It's a calamity that is ongoing, because now people are fighting for resources, water, and coming from a dry area. The second thing you have talked about is about government failure on the youth. That one I can say it has heavily failed. And something that pains me, it's just the other day I heard the media reported that there were some youths during the COVID time. They were given a tender to supply beds, and they took huge amount of loans, and the government has never purchased those beds. So The banks are on them and on their necks. So I think the government has failed us totally.
Okay, and
And
in
it-
those areas,
Yeah.
in the war-torn areas that we have, the 3 counties that we have mentioned, we saw the CS some time back appealing to the youth and the public, and some people actually brought in and gave up their guns
Yeah.
to the government. So again, the government has played a role in trying to get security in those areas, to improve the security in the state regions. But then, can we now get to the local leaders? Because once the people have surrendered their weapons, then how else are they armed again for them to go back to war? Yes, and Cherry.
Now, a couple of mistakes they make. Number one, the collection of guns, firearms from all these guys in these places, Baringo, Turukana, and West Pokot, is not done in an effective manner. The former provincial administration, which of course has been reorganized under the new constitution with the devolved units, is not as effective currently as it used to be. The guys you can use to report on who has a firearm, and then this guy is persuaded politely to return them. Then, if I'm going to bank on my firearm, let's say my AK-47 for my security, and you want me to give it to you as the government, I have to be assured of my security and my safety.
Yeah.
So that is what these guys need to do. You take police officers and you make sure there's sufficient numbers of cops in these places, in well-equipped police stations, and then these guys will be made to feel safe. The area, leaders, clan elders, the chiefs, sub-chiefs, and all that, and members of parliament can come together and say, you know what, now because we have enough security here, and there's no threat of banditry or raiding or whatever, or rustling, we can give back our firearms. Every single person in the possession of a firearm will give it back knowing my back is covered. Until that happens, this business of collecting firearms from here and there, guys will hide them knowing this government is not effective. So, I have to hide my... So in a clan of like 50 guys with 35 firearms, only 5 will be collected. And of course the media will play its role. They'll be laid down there, photos will be taken, and the headline will be villagers return firearms. So 5 of them will have been surrendered, 35 or 30 will be still in the villages. So there'll be attacks. Because there is no police station, like he said, there are no police officers enough to take care of guys. These guys are so few to a point where they attack themselves and get killed. Okay? And, if let's say maybe there are 10 bandits attacking a police station with 2 guys, what will they do? Counter them or hide?
Yeah.
They'll hide. So until all these places are taken care of in terms of enough supply of police officers, equipment, enough, these police land cruisers, these guys will never surrender their firearms. That's the point. So what we'll be doing is just to do some, circular motion. Same point. Insanity means you do the same thing over and over and over again and expect different results. So until these guys are given security to a point where they're comfortable without firearms, they'll never surrender them. And they'll always find a way to actually access others to replace the ones they surrender.
Then what really is the basis or the genesis of these killings and war in those 3 counties?
We've talked about culture, where you go raid a neighboring community or clan and collect animals, come back and you celebrate it as a leader. That is backward culture that has never been gotten rid of. Again, the NGOs that used to help us in dealing with that, again, were crushed by the Jubilee administration. You remember in the run-up to the 2017 elections, there was a guy who was in charge of the NGO council who was used to deregister so many of these NGOs in the name of, they're being funded by Westerners to undermine the government. So they went broke, So they cannot go down there where the government cannot even go to talk to these guys and tell them, hey, you don't have to go to the neighboring clan to steal animals for you to prove that you're a man. So the culture continues. So until that is dealt with, it's not going to disappear. You'll be shocked that some guy will get out of college where he's, tested the modern life, go back to raid so as to be accepted into the headset as a man, because that is something he believes in as well.
Culture is
Yes.
deeply rooted.
So even the idea of employment cannot stop that from happening. That is number one. So culture has to be dealt with. Until it's dealt with, it will contribute to what we have. Number two, security. Security, and it has to be coordinated and organized. All these guys have to be involved. You don't just send police officers who will go and also commit what? Atrocities, because they don't know even the local language. You involve the elders, the chiefs, sub-chiefs, and all these guys. MCAs.
Local leadership.
Yes, so that it's an all-inclusive kind of what? Initiative. Until that is done, we're just wasting time. And this amount of money that is being wasted in the name of trying to expand the national executive, the national government, should actually be dedicated to developing these places, infrastructure, getting more police, stations, so that when we talk about now creating more positions for members of parliament and senators and all that, the very, very bottom of the country has been upgraded. Yeah, like he said, I think we have our priorities totally misplaced.
Okay, and then let's just quickly talk about the US presidential elections. So you know that Joe Biden, he was inaugurated on Thursday, and in his first day of office after the inauguration, he issued 17 directives. So among them were World Health Organization, that Trump had withdrawn US from the World Health Organization, so he revoked that. And then, of course, one other thing, that directive that he gave was on immigration. And we know that now something like immigration then affects African countries and affects Kenya because of the strict measures that had been made by the former president, Donald Trump. So with these new directive, say for immigration, what does that mean for Kenya?
Well, first I want to congratulate the Biden-Harris ticket. It's something that inspires ladies and women in particular. And I'm also looking forward to having a DP or a president who is a lady in our country as well. Second, I also want to say that during the Trump administration, Kenya and US and some trade agreements, we were doing quite well, I think. But when Biden came in, we also saw the ambassador resigned. I think that will help in some way the negotiations that we are having, and we will have maybe a fresh negotiations, maybe with the next president who is coming in from 2022. On matters immigration, a couple of days before the retirement of the President Trump, we saw him deporting a couple of Africans back to Kenya, which I think was unlawful, citing the relevant international statutes that we have signed, or rather we are are they called signatories to? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think he violated the terms that we had with them, and I think that's why when Biden came to power, he had to reverse the say. You cannot do a wrong with a wrong, so he had to rectify that. And something again in what he did, something that it gives me confidence again, is the return of US to the Paris Agreement. That is on climate change.
Yeah.
It is something which is affecting the whole world, global world. And after COVID, actually, that is the next disaster that we are having, the climate change. We are seeing depleting natural resources, depleting water catchment areas. Rivers have gone dry. Areas that were productive have now stopped being productive.
Okay.
So I think the issue of climate change also is something that inspires me much into the Biden administration.
Okay.
And
So for the purposes of time, I'll just have Wanchari give his views of the theme so we can conclude.
Okay.
At the end of the day, every American president is elected to look out for American interests. The difference is the advisors. There's what we call structured leadership, which has to, fit into a particular theory. you can have someone like Bush who was in the group of, what we call primacy, where you push and make sure the US is a hegemony, like on top of the world. That is why he was so much into war. Anytime there was a problem, he'd send in American military to make sure, the flag that gets flown at the end of the day is the American flag. Trump was isolationist. His idea was, America first, we don't care what happens anywhere else in the world. That is why there was minimal support for most of the programs which were initiated during the Bush administration and supported during the Obama administration, of course. Now, the Biden administration has what we call cooperative engagement, whereby you move in and support specific initiatives which add to American, strength, and you also support the world. That is how you bring America back to global leadership. That is why you had to sign back through executive orders to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, and of course, we went back to the World Health Organization, because at the end of the day, there's no way you can close borders to the US like Trump was trying to do, because if through money given to WHO, countries can be given support to prevent, outbreaks of diseases.
Yeah. And even during the pandemic.
Yes, and because of the global, village we have now, guys are moving all over. So if there's a threat, for example, in the Kenyan, health system, it means Americans are in danger, because Kenyans will be moving and Americans will be coming here.
Okay.
There's no way the US can be safe if the rest of the world is not. So we have a sober president who has been able to understand what it means to bring the US back to global leadership. And I think, without sounding too superfluous about the US, the world is better when the US is at the top, as it is now. It's not perfect, but I think that is what we have as an aspirational model of democracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen, for your time, taking your time to be here and have this discussion.
Thank you.
And we have come to the end of the Week in Focus. Today we have been talking about the campaign trail of 2022, the Kapedo killings, and the U.S. presidential directives that were issued in Joe Biden's first day in office. I am Nancy Nalima. Thank you so much for watching.
The purposes of God cannot be thwarted. In today we are at PCEA Matthias Bahati Church.